Hello everybody in YouTube land, and welcome to a new series on the channel that's called Card of the Week. What I'm going to do is I'm going to roll a random card on my third favorite website, Arkham Build, and we're going to talk about that card. This is kind of just a free discussion. These aren't meant to be long videos. These are kind of meant to be supplemental videos to make your week of board gaming, analysis, discussion, and also Arkham Horror better. With the changes to the channel and now having a gameplay channel, I'm able to kind of explore more of the video, like the discussion stuff, and honestly, I'm having fun. It's stress-free. I'm just doing what I want to do, and right now, I want to roll a card and see what we get and what we're going to talk about. You already know what the card is because of the video name and thumbnail, but I don't, so let's see what it is. Pickpocketing 2. So this is a 2 experience, 2 cost rogue asset. It commits for 2 foot icons, or agility if you're a stickler. It's a talent and illicit. It's fast. As a reaction, after you evade an enemy, exhaust pickpocketing, draw 1 card, or gain 1 resource. If you succeed by 2 or more, do both instead. So one thing for this card of the week is I'm not going to be having other cards on the screen to kind of like talk about what I'm talking about, like if I'm going to refer to another card like I'm about to with pickpocketing and sticky fingers. I'm not going to refer to what those cards are, so I highly suggest to look up on Arkham Build as I'm talking about it. Pause the video if you have to, because we're just kind of having an open discussion here. So, Pickpocketing. This card has been here since the Path to Carcosa. So for some context, for when the game was just released, for people who have come into the game earlier, or later in its life and don't really know what the game was like with a smaller card pool, the investigators that we had that were were rogue for front facing at this point were Skids O'Toole, who had 4 foot. There was Jenny Barnes, who had 3 foot, and then we had Safina Rousseau, who had 4 foot as well. So there was this idea of evading to get this to get the value out of this, and there was an upgraded version of a level 0 version, which I'll just quickly kind of just show here the difference. This one is just after you evade an enemy, draw a card, and this was in the core set. In our off-class rogues, who do we had? We had Wendy Adams in the core set. There was no other off-class rogues in the core set. No off-class rogues could take this in Dunwich. And then in Carcosa, Mark couldn't, Min couldn't, Lola could, thank God, and the Mystic, who's the Akachi, couldn't. So this was basically at this point just for like Lola Hayes, thank God, and our 3 rogue investigators at the time. It's actually kind of funny because predominantly when this card was released, the best investigator who was actually, like, the investigator who was best at succeeding by 2 or more was actually Jenny Barnes. And a big reason for that was there's a card Streetwise, a permanent where you could spend 2 resources and get +3 book or +3 foot. If those numbers are wrong, sue me. I'll see you in court. But she was able to use her additional resource that she got during each upkeep phase to put into Streetwise to then get a resource back and draw a card. It's actually kind of funny that that was the way that worked. Like, obviously, like, Skids and Safina were also able to do this when the card was released. But a big thing that stopped them from being able to take advantage of it in the same way that Jenny did was because Jenny had that extra resource during the upkeep phase. So if she had 1 copy of Pickpocketing, she was able to get, when the turn was all done, she was able to, with Streetwise, get out of it +1 resource, where Safina and Skids were like ultimately down 1 resource. This got even more crazy when you added additional, when you had 2 copies of Pickpocketing, because unlike Sticky Fingers, which is the replacement for Pickpocketing in a way, this card didn't allows you to have 2 of them in play, which feels absolutely nutty when you're capable of that. What stopped, what eventually stopped Jenny from being the #1 user of Pickpocketing was we got better rogues for evasion. Finn came out in the Forgotten Age of the next set, and he was really able to make this card sing because he had a free evade. So now his free evades allowed him to use to draw two cards and gain 2 resources, and both were in play. And let me tell you, that is a crazy gameplay loop to actually like have happen. Beyond that as well, economy kind of became the resources that Jenny was able to earn with her ability kind of fell to the wayside because In the long run, pickpocketing became your economy in your deck to kind of like push it above and beyond. In addition to cards like Faustian Bargain and other big boosts to economy, especially that came out later, that ultimately meant that like how Jenny Barnes was kind of scaled out. She unfortunately lost her pickpocketing crown, but we can't not acknowledge her ability of being the best pickpocketing user by the time that it did come out. Apart from maybe Wendy Adams. Wendy Adams was really good because she could also discard a card to like redraw a token to get the trigger and then replace the card. But as you can see, there's a kind of similar through line there of what makes them the best users of it. And it's the fact that the resources that go into it are easier to make up for if you do happen to lose them. So, but what made pickpocketing more ubiquitous? Because when it first came out, like I said, it was actually kind of niche. Evading was pretty bad for the majority of the early part of Arkham's lifetime, and even when they released Rita Young in The Circle Undone, it never really came out. And unfortunately, this wasn't a trick. Rita Young would love this card, but Rita Young had that kind of weird thing where this is talent and illicit, so like she was not able to take advantage of it. But ultimately, what caused this card to become more kind of just generalized, where Skids could use it, Jenny could use it, Safina can use it, anyone can use it to kind of the same sort of level. There's obviously people who shine more, like for example, Kimani Jones does use pickpocketing probably the best in this day and age of Arkham at the time of recording this video. But what made pickpocketing more ubiquitous was the fact that evasion became, agility, your foot score, became easier to increase. Whether this was by passive boosts in the form of like the tarot card that came out in Circle Undone, Lola Santiago that came out in the Forgotten Age, Delilah O'Rourke, who came out, I believe, in Dream Eaters. She came out of the No Point of Return. The point of no return box. It was that ability to like make your agility score, make your foot score really high, that made it so that you could just evade an enemy and then kind of just like get ahead of the game, to the point where you were excited to spend an action to use pickpocketing because it allowed you to gain an upkeep phase. And that was a very, very powerful thing for players to do. When I say gain an upkeep phase, I mean draw a card and gain a resource, the thing you do during your upkeep phase. But again, this thing gets a little bit crazy when you're able to stack two of them together, right? When you have two pickpocketings in play, oh my god, it feels really, really good. A fun little fact, when I was prepping for the Pats Carcosa week video, which the history of the Pats Carcosa, one thing that they actually pointed out compared to the original pickpocketing is when they were talking about the card, they were like, the new version compared to the original is fast, which means you can play it at any time. And I'm like, yeah, that's really cool. I'll talk about that in a second more specifically. But they actually specifically cited that the extra foot icon meant that you can now commit it to your evasions to help succeed your first pickpocketing. And I think that's a very interesting sort of kind of like rhetoric that the original design thesis probably had, that this was the idea where pickpocketing, why would you want to play two of them when you could just like use one to make the other one better? And the reality is just more of a good thing is more of a good thing. And the more value you're able to squeeze out of every Arkham action, the more likely you are to come out ahead. Now, let's talk about fast for a second, because I think that actually also means the icons are relevant. I'm going to be honest with you. Pickpocketing, there you can put your thumb. Let's just cover these. These icons don't exist, at least on the level 2 version. The icon does exist for the level 0 version, because you're going to want to actually like you don't always want to spend the action to do this. But as far as I'm concerned, unless you're drawing this on like the last 2 or 3 turns of the game, pickpocketing is always playable. And there's one reason for that, and that is the fast keyword. This is a keyword that I think when it first came out, at least myself as players, me, Travis, and Bryn, I'd have to look back to see, because I don't really know and remember completely. But I think that like fast was obviously good, but fast is not as good as it is right now, and a fast wasn't as appreciated as much back then, and I think there was one specific reason for that, and that is the fact that card draw, especially in a legacy environment where the Arkham Card pool is right now, is so much better, which meant that finding your first pickpocketing will make it easier to find your second pickpocketing, both because the pickpocketing copy number 1 is drawing cards, but also because everything else in your deck around it is probably likely drawing cards at a more efficient rate. This makes it so that pickpocketing, in my opinion, from its current age, is less about something you do to make evasion better. And now, I think at this point, it's more something you do to play to just break your deck and just maximize value. It's kind of funny because originally they had to like reward you for evasion, and now like evasion is just a normal things that the rogue class does. And I think it's very smart and very astute of the designers to make Sticky Fingers worse than pickpocketing. Sticky Fingers just gets resources. The upgraded version is just fast. They're also limit 1 per investigator in play. So it's one of those things where you can't build this outrageous pickpocketing value engine because that's what it ultimately turned into. At first, it was just a nice little cherry on top of the Evade Sundae, which kind of smelled like poop when you got a little bit too close. But now at this point, you have so many other effects that cascade off evasions or reward you for having evaded enemies, or ultimately, the just value is so good that you don't mind spending the evasion action to keep the enemy locked down. There's also now freeze effects, which means that you can also take turns off between evading, but ultimately when you have pickpocketing, you're looking at evading every turn, and I think that at a certain point, if you are evading for value, you're kind of just neutralizing the idea of what the evade action is, which is a desperate method of running away from the problem as opposed to solving the problem. I think ultimately pickpocketing is probably, it wasn't too strong when it was released, but I think it's an example of a card that became too strong as the card pool got bigger and bigger. This is something that happens to a lot of cards, and expect that as kind of a reoccurring thing as these cards of the week. But ultimately, I think pickpocketing is a pretty big example of that, and a good example of why I think that certain aspects of the rogue upgrade pool makes it the strongest, and pickpocketing, I think, is one of those things. The card selection and the easy economy that comes with it. That is our first card of the week. Did you enjoy this? Please let me know down in the comments. Like I said, this is kind of me just trying out some new formats. I'm seeing if it sticks. I like this idea. I had fun talking about it. It's kind of exciting to see what card shows up. But if you liked it, let me know in the comments. Like the video. If you want to go above and beyond, you can also join our Patreon or become a YouTube member. I'd appreciate the support. Have a good one. Thanks for watching. And as always, a GG's.